All right, welcome back. This is the Escape course with Dr. VG. We are on lesson 3. We're talking about bias this week, and we actually have a lot to talk about. So let's hop to it. All right, now that you're back from that, we have, once again, another activity. Why? Because I told you, it's all about talking and sharing. It's about interacting with other people. So if you are interacting with people, let's move into it. Applying the steps for critical analysis of bias against current events. And we have lots of things to apply it to. This should be fun, to be perfectly honest with you. Look at the context of the events, and some of them might be controversial. Try to remain on topic. Try to distinguish fact from opinion as you apply the SCA. And then, of course, capture your analysis and talk about it and compare notes, so on and so forth, so that you can explore what we're actually talking about. So, for example, I'll talk about myself. I'll talk about bias because it goes on. It does. Currently, right now, what we're actually looking at, really, there's a lot of bias against protective services. Okay? That's it. We want to defund organizations. We're talking about the militarization of these organizations. We're talking about how they are just puppets of the state and so on and so forth. All right, let's put this into perspective now. Because there's a level of bias that is growing, and there's prejudice growing behind it. Now, I'm going to talk about me, the upbringing of DocV. I personally have been on the business end of a serviceman's revolver 4 times in my life. First time, I'm sitting in the backyard with my girlfriend. I'm sitting out there doing whatever I'm doing, waiting for her to come out because she didn't. She broke her own window trying to get a note out to me. And as I'm sitting in her backyard shooting a BB gun at target practice at weeds. The neighbor heard a window breaking, didn't know the girl was trying to contact me, just saw a black man sitting in the back with a BB gun. All right? Didn't know it was a BB gun, just saw me shooting and aiming. So thankfully, I had put my stupid BB gun back in my backpack when the cops turned the corner with weapons drawn. So what did they say? Face in the dirt. As to be expected. They were called out to a person sitting in the backyard with a gun. So I'm starfish down on the ground with a boot in my back. Right? That's what it was. Boot in the back. Gun on me. What are you doing out here? She came out, eventually explained all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I had a boot in my back and not a bullet because they told me to get on the ground. And that's what I did. I got on the ground. Another time, I was at my girlfriend's high school. I was dropping off a present in her car during school day while gym was out. They saw me darting in between the cars because I think she was in the gym, so I didn't want people to see me. I had my wallet in my hand. I pull out the doggone, I made a beeline. I got out of the parking lot real fast as I was doggone driving away. There were about 5 or 6 squad cars at the end of the road because somebody had saw me at the school and called the cops. They stopped me. They pulled me over to the side. Once again, starfish in the dirt. Why did they starfish me in the dirt? Because somebody at a school saw a guy. See, I was younger. All I ever wore was black. Probably a hood. That's what I did. So I'm at a high school hopping around cars with what looks to be some black thing in my hand, all dressed in black, driving and speeding away. What do you think? I'm saying this. Let me say this. As a parent, I know what I would think today. As a 19-year-old boy, I didn't think like that. That's what I can say. So, once again, they tore through my car. Where's the weapon? There was no weapon. It was my wallet. They realized what was going on. It's just some young kid who's infatuated with a girlfriend who has no good reason being on school grounds. They banned me from going back to the school, and once again, I got up, walked away. Yeah, my car was all tore up, but that was the price I paid for doing dumb things. That was Vic doing what could be arguably considered a dumb thing. I was driving back and forth. I had just gotten out of back from overseas. I had missed a court date for some U-turn I did, but I didn't know that I had it. The court date came up while I was overseas. I just didn't know. Driving down the hill, it was a mountain in Maryland. I was racing some car. I don't know. The car was on this side. I was in the fast lane. We were doing about 95 down the mountain, just like this. Why didn't I see the cop sitting out there? He was way out there, way out there. All this cop did was walk out in the middle of the lane, held up his hand, and pointed to the side. That's all he did. And I thought, oh man, my car went woo. The other guy, he just kept on going. I pulled over, did that. It was at least 95, almost 100. It was in a 55. Bad. Breaking the law all over the place. He comes back to the car after dog checking my stuff up. I need you to step out, put your hands on the hood. Oh my goodness, I had no idea for a speeding ticket? No. While I was overseas, there was a bench warrant issue because I missed the court date. I didn't know. They took me to jail. I was sitting in there all weekend long. What did they do? They throw me in a drunk tank. You know what they did? The drunk tank was full. Cops brought up a cot and let me sit inside of beside their desk. As I did. So I really didn't sit in a jail cell. I just sat beside their desk all weekend long. You going to run? Nope. You got parents to call? Yep. Well, you sit here because court's not going to be open until Monday morning, so just hang out with us. And that's what I did. That's what I did. Another time, it had to do with alphabet agencies in D.C. Yeah, that kind of sucked because that was something I simply didn't do. Somebody was just blaming me for something that I was the best job I ever had. I won't even go into it because it was scary at the time, to be perfectly honest with you, to have that kind of weapon you thrown at you and people saying crazy things. But that one, I was innocent. But I still walked out. My parents came back with me. We were all doggone haggling out in the parking lot, and they told them to get out too. So that was that. Now, I mention those topics not because I want to make light of it. I mention it because of something which I consider important, to be perfectly honest with you. The first time I'm sitting in the backyard of my girlfriend's place, they put me down on the ground. I walked away after feeling like, I don't know, a maniac for sitting in the backyard of somebody shooting a BB gun and expecting nothing good to come of that. The second time, I walked away from that after cleaning up my car and realizing that, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to go dress in black, running in between cars and speeding away from a public school in the middle of the day. Probably not a good idea. The third time, I'm traveling down the road, I'm speeding, obviously breaking the law. Sure, there are things that I didn't know about the court date, but I went through, I did what I needed to do, I paid my fine, I had my court date, and then everything was wiped clean. Went about with my life. The last time at that place, so I could say I felt bad. That was targeted I would have to say. My parents understood it was targeted. To be perfectly honest with you, even the people who were doing the targeted knew that it was targeted. They knew this. But life is complicated. Things were complex, and it seemingly had to go down the way that it went down. But the reality is this: after all of those instances that did occur, that did happen in my lifetime, I am still here. I am still here talking to my sons, educating them. One time my son he needed to make it back. We were leaving someplace and I didn't know where he was. The whole family was loaded and here he comes running down the street. This guy, he was with a girlfriend of his own, was leaping over fences, running through backyards here in this place in order to make it back on time so Dad wouldn't get angry. I said, have you lost your mind? I said, if you ever find yourself running through backyards and leaping over fences and things like that in this place, I will break your legs myself. That's what I told him. I said, there's some things you just don't do. You just be late. You be late and not be dead. Now, maybe that's an exaggeration. I can't speak badly about my neighbors too much. They're fairly decent people, but there are things that you just gotta think about. You just need to think about. And a lot of what we have going on in modern society, I mean, there is this element of bias that is prevalent on all sides, from every angle seemingly. And it confuses and conflates. And I guess if there's any one thing that I could, Dr. VG, that I could impart upon people today, any piece of advice, I mean, I understand where bias comes in, and I understand where discrimination lives, and I understand how it can negatively and threateningly impact a situation. What I can say is this: if you are in those situations, as I did what a citizen should do. I followed directions. I did what was asked. If we needed to battle this out in court, well, then we battle it out in court. Nowadays, we have phones all over the place with cameras. It should be easy to battle things out in court, man. Maybe that's a naive way of looking at the court system. I've been in the court systems myself multiple times, so I do have some experience there. But that's what the courts and the law is there for. We can make use of those things. My advice, yes. Follow instructions, do what needs to be done. Many people in protective services, as I said again, they just want to go home and have a dinner and binge watch TV, not necessarily have to deal with life-altering events. And that provides an excellent segue into an event that happened here in this city. It happened while I was doing a diversity seminar with some of the people and faculty that I had in that particular course at the college. And it was a terrible event, but it provided a great opportunity for discussion. So I'm running a seminar. It happens to be a Saturday morning. It was a Friday night, I believe. And somebody got shot that night. And I was running a seminar, and what I knew is that in addition to all the rest of the faculty who was there, I mean, my school, my college, we teach the fire services, we teach protective services. So there are policemen who go through my particular college as well to do the things that they do. So I knew that there were actual policemen who were in that particular diversity class with me, right, that I was facilitating. So the first thing I wanted to do, because I know how things go, I mean, we're a pretty liberal town, And I knew how this was going to turn out. First thing I did, as soon as we got into the class, everybody sat down, I mentioned, this happened last night. This is the way that it's going. We're going to have protests out of this, but I want the protective services instructors to have the first say in this class. And that's precisely what they did. So they went and detailed about, not really what was going on because things were active. So they couldn't really talk about that. But what they could talk about were all the rest of the stuff that happened at night. The other things that actually almost sent them home, sent them to their graves. The other things that actually had to happen. The times that they actually had to go and rescue people. The people that they actually were performing CPR on, who collapsed in their apartments. All those things. What we were focused on that morning was the fact that somebody had died that night. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to say it was right or wrong. What I am going to say was that it was a hard situation. It almost always is. It was a hard situation. And I would feel bad if it were my own sons, who I'll bring up in a second. But I've been in hard situations. Now, there are lots of things that impact stuff. You have drug abuse, you have mental instability, you have lots of things. Does that require bullets to be thrown? No. Does that require maybe, a half dozen officers responding instead of just one? Maybe. That's some of the stuff that was brought up by the officers in my course as they were explaining to us what was actually going on that night, how it actually goes, what happens overnight. There may not necessarily be the same number of people on staff, on call, so on and so forth. They were explaining the difficulties that they experience every day. And a lot of the things, they just want to go home at night. They have their own families. They have their own kids. It's like my sons, right? We've had protests this past year. All kinds of things. Everybody hating on the National Guard because they come out there and they're towing the line of all the rest of the protective service. They come out there in support of the protective services. My sons get activated for these kinds of things. Now, I can tell you this. Yes, I served in the military. I'm a Marine. I did that because I'm an altruist. I love humanity. I love my species, right? So I will do what I can to help my species because I believe we are worthy of being helped. I love being human, and I love the humans I share the planet with. So my recruiter was good. What was it, Staff Sergeant McCullough? I was a tag program student back in the day. We call it talented and gifted. So I was in all the hard class in high school, but I was a young black kid. My parents didn't go to college. They really didn't know how it worked. I was almost first generation, so we didn't have money. I didn't know what I was going to do. All the rest of my friends, and they're all colleged up. They all knew what they were doing. I didn't know until Sergeant McCullough, I'm looking for... This guy was like, I'm looking for the esteemed Mr. Victor Gary Johnson. I mean, what are you supposed to say to that? I mean, this guy is not calling me the esteemed. I'm like, what? Who are you? He says, I am a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps of the United States. I mean, something crazy like that. And for me, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I wanted to be a toy maker. That's what I knew when I was a kid. I wanted to be a toy maker. And I eventually became it. I mean, I wanted to build robots. I wanted to build AIs. That's what I became it. Thankfully, I mean, that's great. I became what I dreamed I'd be. But nevertheless, at the time, I didn't know how to get there. But the Marines had an idea, and he was exceedingly good. He was exceedingly good. And I thought, well, I'm helping people out. He says I can help myself out and help my nation out. Well, that's cool. Everything's great. My sons, I didn't tell them to go into the military, but they followed in that footstep. It's how I raised them. They believed in altruistic endeavors themselves. They believed in helping out those who need help. So they get deployed. The last thing I would want as a father is to have my sons attacked by people that they're out there trying to protect. I mean, come on. That's where the bias comes in. I mean, you're looking at this and we might think that protective services are this and that. I'm telling you, all my sons want to do is to come home and play some Serious Sam or some Left 4 Dead or some Back 4 Blood or even Fortnite. They just want to come home with dad, have a dinner, and watch a TV show and play some games with their sister. They don't want to get beat down by anybody. They're not trying to beat down anybody else. So it's a bias that they have to worry about now as they go about doing the altruistic, performing altruism for their fellow Americans, for people who need help. We allow our biases to create scenarios and situations which can be harmful. We need to stop and think about these kinds of things. There may be bad apples in protective services. I can tell you this, my sons are not those. They aren't. They just aren't. And there are many people like that. All right? We need to be careful to group people into biased opinions and categories and make subjective statements based upon our limited perspectives. Understand that there might be other ways of looking at it. There might be other reasons for what's going on. Not jumping to conclusions, stopping, asking the questions, applying the critical analysis, looking at it, and trying to make sure that we've made the best decision possible. All right? That's what we need to do. That would be ideal. That's it for this particular week. I mean, that's going to be the conversation I have about bias for the time being. Next week, we move it to correlation. I thank you for sitting with me, talking. If you were inside of a group, I thank you for working on some of the activities and sharing yourself. We out here on our site, we do have the to-do list of the things that are going to be required for you before you move on to lesson 4. All right. As always, I'd like to encourage you to apply critical analysis, and thank you. Jiffy Tires.